All right, how's everybody doing?
Great.
All right, good. Did everybody get a couple of the pamphlets that came around? A pamphlet and a flyer. It's a white pamphlet and this flyer right here. This is Black Wall Street. All right, good. You can get the pamphlet. I have some extra ones. And actually, they're back at my table, so I'll give it to you at the end. They're back at my table. I have some more. All right, so I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer. I'm on 9:10 a.m. Superstation. How many people listen to 9:10 a.m. Superstation? WFDF. Okay, a few people? All right, good. So I've been studying African history, African American history for 27 years. Been doing radio for 9 years, the African History Network show. And I've spoken at a number of the events that Inkster, the city of Inkster has put on this month for African American History Month. So give them a round of applause for what they're doing. Because this is the first time I've ever seen a city organize 28 days of events for African American History Month. That's fantastic, okay? So this presentation is a combination of a couple of larger presentations. And this deals with some of the information they covered in episode 4 of African Americans, many rivers across the African Americans. So this is Breaking the Chains, how Black History Month and Black Panther reconnect us to our history and culture, exposing the myths, all right? And a lot of the information they have, they cover in episode 4, I'm very familiar with because I have lectures that I've done dealing with some of those topics like the history of Black Wall Street. All right, and this is a 3-hour presentation I've done dealing with breaking the chains while we celebrate African American History Month, exposing the myths. So this presentation here is dedicated to two of my heroes, Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time, who won the heavyweight championship of the world, age 22, February 25th, 1964. That's some African American history right there. And then also his friend up until Malcolm separated from the Nation of Islam. And Malcolm was assassinated February 21st, 1965 also, okay? So these are two of our greatest heroes. All right. Now some of the things I deal with in this presentation is dealing with the origins of African American History Month, why it was created, who created it, how we make it relevant for today and the future. Because a lot of times, and I've been to previous African American History Month celebrations throughout the years, a lot of times we recycle the same 15 to 20 sanitized Negroes, right, every year. Right? That's what we do. And don't understand why was this created in the first place, okay? And then also I deal with dispelling myths regarding our history also. Now, anytime I speak, I know I may say some things that may be outside the circumference. Some people's awareness, just because you may disagree with them or don't like them, does not mean they're not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about, all right? So this is a, I'm not sure if we have the audio, but this is a clip of Malcolm X, and this is a clip of Malcolm, and the audio's not loud enough, I can tell you what he's saying. It's 59 seconds. But he's asking the question of who are we, okay? And one of the things that African American History Month does is reconnects us to who we are, okay? So he asks, who are you? Don't tell me Negro. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you and what did you have? What language did you speak then, okay? He said, don't tell me Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. Okay? He said, they don't have those type of names where you and I came from. He said, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Who took it? Where did it go? He asked you, what happened to your history? He said, how did a man wipe out your history? He said, what land did you own? Okay? Where did you come from? And he asked him, he said, what happened to you to make you as dumb as you are right now? So when you start listening to this, it starts causing you to ask questions, right? What happened to us? And contrary to popular belief, even though you're going to see celebrations, commemorations this year, commemorating 400 years of African people being in this land. They're talking about August 20th, 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. You've heard them talk about this, right? You've heard them talk about this, right? Yes. The 400th anniversary. Contrary to popular belief, we've been here long before that. In this land we call the United States of America. If we just look at as enslaved Africans, if you understand the history of the transatlantic slave trade, you know that the Spanish were involved in the transatlantic slave trade before the English got involved. So the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina in the 1520s, specifically 1526. This is about 100 years before Jamestown, Virginia. Because when you study, anybody ever studied the history of the transatlantic slave trade? It starts right about 1440, 1441 with the Portuguese, and the Spanish are right behind them. And when you look at where Spain and Portugal are geographically, they're right next to each other, okay? And to understand the transatlantic slave trade, and I'm speaking at the Middle Passage Memorial on Saturday. I'm speaking at 3 different locations on Saturday, so you gotta bear with me, okay? That's the last one, okay? So, I'm speaking at the Middle Passage Memorial on Saturday, February 16th, Booker Dozier said. And when we study the transatlantic slave trade, which is how many Africans were dispersed to this land, we have to understand the previous hundreds of years of history of the Africans known as the Moors in Europe. Because that sets up the transatlantic slave trade. What they taught the Europeans came back to haunt us, and it set up the transatlantic slave trade. So how many people are familiar with Dr. David Imhotep? Dr. David Imhotep wrote a groundbreaking book called The First Americans or Africans Documented Evidence. It came out in 2011. And he's a friend of mine. He's no relation. He's not my father or my brother or anything like that. But his book deals with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. Not based upon a bone or two found here or there. Not based upon mythology, but based upon hard archaeological evidence. Now you can go to his website, historictruth.info. You can download a 2-page abstract overview of his book for free, okay? And if you Google his name and my name, I've interviewed him about 11 times, so all my interviews are archived. I have about 900 audio podcasts of my shows going back to 2010 you can listen to. But just very quickly here, on page 14 of his book, he deals with a groundbreaking discovery that was made in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. And this discovery took place in Allendale County, South Carolina. And here's what they found. They found 13 different disciplines fairly documented an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. Now this shouldn't surprise any of us, because when we study our history, we know we have circumnavigated the globe many times. We know African people have gone all across the world, even into Europe, thousands of years ago. So this shouldn't surprise us. But unfortunately, this is not taught to us. It's not taught to us for a specific reason. So here's what they found. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints, and lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeleton structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines fairly documented an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. In South America, going back at least 56,000 years ago, okay? Now his book also has 713 footnotes that fairly document this, so you can go research all this yourself. So very quickly, here's a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. He's a white archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. There was a good article from ScienceDaily.com from November 18, 2004. 15 years ago. Most of our people, I travel across the country, do lectures, most of our people don't know this. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay, and it's still there, ScienceDaily.com. You can go read it yourself. You don't have to take my word for this. African presence in North America 50,000 years ago. Here's a summary of what this article says. Now, this is not my summary. This is a summary from ScienceDaily.com. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains were artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. When you read Dr. David Imhotep's book, he deals with who those people were. Those were the Khoisan, who come from Southern Africa, have the oldest DNA on the planet. The ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. The Twa are negatively, derisively, pejoratively called pygmies in European anthropology and archaeology, and they go all around the world, okay? In Many Rivers to Cross, they talked about Ida B. Wells, right? Ida B. Wells, I call her one of the original ride or die chicks, because this sister was bad. Her, Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, they all carried guns also, all right? These sisters were not playing. But when we study Ida B. Wells, she was a Renaissance woman, okay? She gets involved in the anti-lynching movement because of the Moss store, because of the People's Grocery killing, Tom Moss and some of the owners, all right? But she was not only a freedom fighter, she was also a school teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, and also in Mississippi. She was a journalist. She owned the Memphis Free Speech in Memphis, Tennessee, but she's also going to go on and co-own other newspapers as well. And later in life, so she dies in 1913. She's ran out of Memphis, Tennessee by the white supremacists, okay, after they trashed her newspaper. And she is going to eventually end up in Chicago. In Chicago, she's going to be a probation officer. for a few years in Chicago also. So this sister did it all. So not only was she a co-founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, in 1909. The NAACP, so if you ever studied the history of the NAACP, and I'm not bashing them, this is information on their website. Go to NAACP.org, they'll tell you this. Of the 57 founders approximately of the NAACP, only 7 were African American. Okay, so that's not me saying this is the history they tell. But prior to the NAACP comes out of an organization called the Niagara Movement, created in 1905. Dr. W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and others, right? What organization did the Niagara Movement come out of? Anybody know? Came out of an organization called the Afro-American Council, created in 1898 by Bishop Alexander Walters and T. Thomas Fortune. And this organization, the Afro-American Council, because the term Afro-American didn't start in the 1960s. That goes back to the 1830s. That picked up the work of an earlier organization in the early 1890s, around 1890, 91, 92, called the National Afro-American League, which was looked at as the first civil rights organization. Because civil rights does not start in 1954 with Brown versus Board of Education, May 17, 1954, Supreme Court decision. It doesn't start with Dr. King and the Montgomery bus boycott, December 5, 1955. Civil rights goes back to 1865, right after the Civil War ends, 1865 and 1866. There was a Civil Rights Act of 1865 that did not pass Congress, it was vetoed. And then there was a Civil Rights Act of 1866, vetoed by Johnson, but the Congress overruled. They vetoed his veto. Okay, so civil rights goes back to 1865 and 66, right after the Civil War ends. Okay, so the Afro-American Council was started in 1898, and they were fighting against the rampant lynchings of African Americans. They had an economic empowerment program for us. They were fighting for us to get all of our rights, things like this, total equality. There's a faction that's going to break out in this organization. You had Booker T. Washington, who was in this organization, Dr. W.B. Du Bois, you had Mary Church Terrell, you had Ida B. Wells. By 1902, there's a pro-Booker T. Washington faction. Then there's a faction with Dr. W.B. Du Bois. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and others are going to break away and form the Niagara Movement in 1905. Okay, that's how the Niagara Movement starts. All right, so and when the Mostor merge takes place in 1892 in Memphis, Tennessee, and there are a couple of good articles dealing with this. She encouraged African Americans to arm themselves, and she said every Negro home needed to have a Winchester rifle. Okay, and she started carrying a gun also. And as they talked about in Many Rivers to Cross, she wrote an article for the newspaper there in Memphis that said that basically a lot of the romantic relationships between black men and white women were consensual. And this really infuriated a lot of white people, especially white men there in Memphis. That's why they trashed her, that's why they destroyed her newspaper office, okay? And she ended up having to flee. And because of those murders, and what happened was, because of those lynchings, because those are friends of hers, okay? Tom Moss, owned the People's Grocery Store, and his friends, because of that, she got involved in the anti-lynching movement, but she started doing research on the lynchings and why they were taking place. And that's what she found out. She found out a lot of those were consensual relationships, but the father found out, the brother found out, the husband found out, all this stuff, right? And then they go lynch African American men. All right, now, who knows who this is? Yes. No, it's Dr. Carter G. Woodson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, right? So Dr. Carter G. Woodson is known as the father of Black History Month, the father of Black History Month. He's also known as the father of Black history. And he was really essential for laying the foundation for Black studies in HBCUs, in colleges, okay? So when we celebrate African American History Month, right, we have to talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So he was born 10 years after slavery ended. He was born in 1875. How many people are familiar with Dr. Carter G. Woodson? Anybody? Anybody speak one time? Okay, all right. All right, so he was born as former slaves. He's born in 1875, 10 years after slavery ends. We know Civil War ends June 2nd, 1865. 13th Amendment ratified December 6, 1865, adopted December 18th. He is basically, he doesn't get formal schooling until about 19, 20 years old. His mother is literate, so his mother teaches him how to read, how to write. He gets an undergraduate degree from Berea College in 1903. Also, he becomes General Superintendent of Education in Manila, Philippines for the U.S. Bureau of Insular Affairs. This brother travels the world also. He spoke multiple languages as well. He taught English, health, and agriculture. He also travels to Asia, North Africa, and Europe in 1907. He comes back to the U.S. He gets an undergraduate degree from University of Chicago in 1907, and also a master's in 1908. He becomes the second African American to get a PhD from Harvard. The first we know was Dr. W.B. Du Bois, 1895. But he's the first of African slave descent, because Dr. W.B. Du Bois was born to free parents. This is one of the reasons why Du Bois had differences with Booker T. Washington. Because Booker T. Washington is a former slave, and he's living down there in Alabama, okay? And he knows what slavery's like. And Booker T. Washington is up in Massachusetts, and he's born to free parents. So even though there were things that both of them said that were right, they're really, even though they're both in the same country, they're dealing with really two different realities, okay? But what happens is in 1915 is a very pivotal year for this country. One is the 50th year anniversary of the ending of the Civil War, and also enslaved Africans being freed because of the 13th Amendment. Chattel slavery ended. Two is also the 50th year anniversary of the Ku Klux Klan being founded. Ku Klux Klan was founded December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee. Right after the 13th Amendment is adopted, the Ku Klux Klan is founded, okay? And then also, 1915 is really at the beginning of what we call the Great Migration, okay? And the Great Migration, basically 1915 to 1970, you got about 6 million African Americans migrating from the South up north and out west. Okay, so what's going to take place is in Chicago in 1915, there was a 3-week symposium that had all types of exhibits and speeches and things like this, chronicling and celebrating the accomplishments and achievements of African Americans over that 50-year period of time, from 1865 when slavery ends up until 1915. Now, it's at this 3-week symposium that Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who's an educator, okay, and he taught at a high school in Washington, D.C. He also taught at Howard University. It's at the symposium that he gets the idea to create an organization to promote the scientific study of black life and history, and to document, research, and preserve the history, accomplishments, and achievements of African Americans in this country, but also on the continent of Africa. So September 9th, 1915, he and 4 friends meet at a YMCA there in Chicago, and they formed the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. How many people have heard of that before? Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Today it's called Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And this is the governing body of African History Month, which used to be Black History Month, which started out as Negro History Week in 1926, okay? So he's going to go on, he's going to create the Journal Negro Life and History, which is a journal for our historians to publish our papers, because the white historical journals did not want to publish our papers largely. It did not want to deal with the topics we wanted to deal with. He's going to found a publishing company in 1921 called Associated Publishers, Inc. Now, this publishing company is not just publishing his books, but also textbooks for HBCUs and our schools also. They're doing this in 1921. And this brother saw the need for this, okay? 1919 to 1922, he's a professor at Howard University and Dean of the School of Liberal Arts, also Dean of the School of Liberal Arts at West Virginia College Institute. Now, 1915, also something pivotal that happens in 1915. They talked about in Many Rivers of the Cross. It was the movie The Birth of a Nation comes out. And The Birth of a Nation calls race riots in the streets. How many people seen the original Birth of a Nation? It's 3 hours. You can watch it on YouTube. Okay, you may have to take a 5-hour energy because it's a silent movie. So there's captions, okay? But this movie rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan because this movie took place during slavery, the Civil War, and after slavery called Reconstruction. It takes place in Piedmont, South Carolina. And all the negative stereotypical images of African Americans that we saw created over the years, going back to 1828, 1829, with T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice, who created the Jim Crow character. This is where the minstrel shows start, okay? All those negative stereotypical images we saw depicted in this movie. Most of the significant characters, depictions of African Americans in the movie were white people in blackface. This movie also depicted black men trying to rape black men trying to rape white women. Okay, and the movie cost $100,000 to make, and it promoted also the image of the happy slave. So there's a scene in the movie prior to the Civil War where they show Dr. Cameron, who is the owner of the plantation, and he and his family are sitting on the porch being entertained by their slaves. They're singing and dancing and everybody's laughing and things like this. And the argument that this movie was making was that everything was fine until the Yankees came from the North with this Civil War. They're making an argument that the slaves were happy. They were almost like part of the family. We almost thought of them as being human, okay? And then the Civil War started. But after the Civil War, you have the Reconstruction era. And we know that you're going to have African Americans starting to own land. They're going to go and become members of Congress. And this movie showed former Union Negro soldiers coming into the town, Piedmont, South Carolina, taking it over and oppressing the white people, pushing them around, things like this, right? So then at the end of the movie, you have the Ku Klux Klan rise up to put down this rebellion. So this is why it's called The Birth of a Nation. And this movie rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan. So by 1915, the Klan is 50 years old. They largely died out by 1915. In newspapers where they had ads promoting this movie, the Ku Klux Klan would oftentimes take out recruiting ads next to the ads for the movie The Birth of a Nation. They also did a private screening for President Woodrow Wilson at the White House, because he was a white supremacist also. And the movie is directed by D.W. Griffith. Now, D.W. Griffith goes on to team up with Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, and as a white, Mary Fairchild, I think was her name, Mary Fairchild. They go on to create United Artists Studios after this movie comes out, okay? The movie was distributed by a man named Louis B. Mayer. Louis B. Mayer takes the profits from distributing this movie. He teams up with two other men named Metro and Goldwyn, and they form Metro Goldwyn Mayer Studios, MGM Studios. So this movie was pivotal, The Birth of a Nation. Now, we protested against this film because we knew it was detrimental to our existence. There's an article from theroot.com called How Black America Rallied to Stop the Racist Film Birth of a Nation, March 1st, 2015. This was the 100th year anniversary of this film. And this article goes into the history of how we protested against this movie. The NAACP led protests against the movie. African American newspapers wrote about it and encouraged us to protest against the movie. When it goes to Boston, William Monroe Trotter, okay, who was a member, one of the early members of the NAACP, actually one of the founders of it. And he leads protests in Boston against this movie as well. And there was a documentary that came out about 2 years ago. They showed it was on PBS, Independent Lens on PBS, called The Birth of a Movement. The Birth of a Movement, which is about the history of William Monroe Trotter leading protests against this movie when it came to Boston, okay? And then we had movies that we were putting out, that we owned and controlled, that showed images of African Americans that we wanted to see, like the real depiction of us, because we knew those images they were feeding, they were detrimental to our existence. Also very quickly, the movie The Birth of a Nation was based upon a novel called The Klansman, okay, by a man named Thomas Dixon. And when the movie first comes out for its first month, the movie is called The Klansman. But they changed the name to The Birth of a Nation. The movie, before the movie came out, there was a play called The Klansman. And in 1906, in Philadelphia, when the play is running, 3,000 African Americans organized a protest against the play because we knew it was detrimental to our existence. If you read Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., in the back of the book, he has a chronology of history, landmarks, and milestones. Go to 1906, he talks about that. So we had Oscar Micheaux and other directors who were putting out African American movies that we own, and we showed these movies at our own theaters. There were two theater chains that we owned, the Lincoln Theater chain and the Lafayette Theater chain. So African African Americans have been making our own movies since The Birth of a Nation came out in 1915. We had about 150 production companies, some completely owned by African Americans, others partly owned by us, that produced our own movies, so this is not new. Oscar Micheaux is the most well-known director of the era. From 1918 to 1948, he directed, produced 44 movies. In the documentary, Many Rivers to Cross, you saw Donald Bogle. You saw Dr. Gates talking to Donald Bogle, right? And they were talking about the movie The Birth of a Nation. Donald Bogle, I talked about him last time. He's known as the father, he's known as the godfather of African-American cinema. He's written a number of books. This is probably the most prolific one. Blacks in American Films and Television, an Illustrated Encyclopedia. Came out in 1998 by Donald Bogle. This is one of the books in my library. This book chronicles every movie and television show that had a significant African-American character in it, all the way up to about 1987, 88. Okay? And it's an encyclopedia. It's a whole history book. It tells you who starred in the movie, when it came out, who directed it. It gives you a synopsis of it. All that stuff. Try to find this on Amazon. I think it may be out of print. Try to find that on Amazon or something. Yes?
Isn't it important for us to control our energy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Power's ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality and see where they're on.
And it's even easier nowadays with all this new technology they have.
Yes, yes. We can go straight to, we can go digital downloads, we can go on Vimeo, we can do it independently. All of that. Now, I'm all for us having big budgets like the movie Black Panther, because we buy 30 to 40% of the movie tickets each year. So that money's going somewhere. So I expect a return on investment. But also, there's a route for independent artists as well. Okay? All right. So let me skip over some of this here. When we deal with the origins of African American History Month, we go back to 1926. And, well, in 1925, Dr. Carter G. Woodson sends out a press release announcing Negro History Week. It's going to be February 26th, the second week in February. February 26th, the second week in February. He chooses February, not because it's the coldest month of the year, not because it's the shortest month of the year. He chooses February, the second week of February, because it contains the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, and the assumed birth date of Frederick Douglass, February 14th, which is today. Unfortunately, we know this is Valentine's Day, don't know the assumed birthday of Frederick Douglass, because Douglass was born a slave. Slaves didn't have birth certificates. He didn't know exactly which year or when he was born. He knew it was either 1817 or 1818. So he assumed the birth date of February 14th, okay? And during this period of time, up until this time, African Americans had already, they were having celebrations already during the second week of February, celebrating Abraham Lincoln's birthday and Frederick Douglass's birthday. Okay, so Dr. Woodson creates this new cultural celebration and puts it during that period of time, all right? And he believed that history was made by people, not primarily great men. So one of the things he wanted to do with the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, as well as African American History Month, or Negro History Week as it started out is to deal with all the unsung heroes and to deal with movements of people also. All the people who don't get the limelight, things like this, right? And then we go into periods of time, we go into World War I, and coming out of World War I, you have the new Negro, which we call race men, and these brothers go about 370,000 African-American men fighting World War I. When they come back home, they say, we want all of our rights right now. He said, we're not going to deal with this segregation, things like this, there are going to have to be some changes. And you have the Harlem Renaissance going on, you have the Great Migration, all this stuff. And then we know 1919 is going to be the Red Summer. You have about at least 25 major race riots across the country. And these brothers fight back also, okay, during the Red Summer. They also fought back during Black Wall Street, okay, the attack June 1st, 1921 as well. I've done an extensive lecture dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. And these brothers fought back and shot back as well. So it wasn't just like they came in and attacked us and we just ran. No, we fought back, okay, we were just outnumbered. That's what happened, we were outnumbered. All right, so now, a lot of people don't know there's a theme each year for African American History Month. How many people know this? Each year there's a theme coming from the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. If we look at some of the themes historically, I'm going to look at all of them going back to 1928. Some of them dealt with African history because the whole purpose of African American History Month is not just to study our accomplishments and achievements here in this country, but also on the continent of Africa, and connect all of them together, deal with a continuum, okay? So if you look at just a few of the things historically, 1928, civilization, a world achievement. 1933, Ethiopia meets era and truth. 1935, the Negro achievements in Africa. 1936, African background outline. 1960, strengthening America through education in Negro history and African culture. 1971, African civilization and culture, a worthy historical background. For more information, for teaching tools, for resources you can use at home with your children, in your classroom, go to asalh.org, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, asalh.org, okay, solid.org. They have all this information there, and they also have information dealing with this year's theme, okay, which deals with black migrations. And so since this is the 400th year anniversary of those 20 and 9 Africans coming into Jamestown, Virginia, and if you heard Reverend Al Sharpton's radio show yesterday, I called in to deal with some of his history, but he didn't quite understand what I was talking about. Because I was dealing with, at the time that these Africans come in 1619, slavery doesn't even exist in the British colonies. Here in this land, slavery don't even exist. They came in as indentured servants. And we call them Africans because the ship that they were on originally was called the San Juan Bautista, which was a Portuguese ship, and they were captured in Angola. It was 350 of them. That ship gets hijacked around Mexico by English pirates. 50 of them are taken off. They're put on 2 ships, the White Lion and the Treasure. Those ships come into Jamestown, Virginia, and the captain of the ship exchanges 20 and 9 Africans for food and supplies, okay? So we may look at them historically and overall and say this started slavery in this country. But they didn't even have, that didn't even exist in Jamestown, Virginia, or any of the colonies at that point in time. They serve out there in district servitude, they're given land, and you have people, you have blacks who come here for about a 40-year period of time. If you read Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., he deals with this in chapter 2. For about a 40-year period of time, you have this happen, where you have black people coming here, entering into indentured servitude, then afterwards being awarded land, going on acquiring more land. Some of them are going to own white servants and black servants as well. So that's a history that's not talked about, okay? All right, and then I often hear people, and I'll wrap up in a few minutes here. Everybody all right?
Yeah.
And I'll take some of your questions in a second. I often hear people say, well, our history is not supposed to be confined to just 1 month out of the year. Well, when you study the origins of African American History Month, it was never designed to be the only month of the year we study our history. It was designed to be a celebration of our accomplishments and achievements. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that for school children, that was supposed to be the month out of the year, the week out of the year, starting out, the week out of the year, that they showed what they had been studying year-round. Because he said it didn't make sense to teach our history 1 week out of the year and teach them white history the rest of the year. Okay? So this is supposed to be a cultural celebration, a time to reflect on our accomplishments and achievements, and a time to look forward to the future. But a lot of people don't know other ethnic groups have monthly cultural celebrations as well. So Jewish American History Month is in May. It started about 2006. National Hispanic History Month is September 15th, October 15th. Hispanics have 2 national monthly cultural celebrations. Irish American History Month is in March. Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is in May. Haitian Heritage Month is in May. Native American History Month is November. Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15th, October 15th. German American, Polish American Heritage Month is in October, okay? So when you study the origins of all of these, and I've studied the origins of them, they basically all start after 1976. 1976 is when Negro History Week became Black History Month and was officially recognized by the federal government. President Gerald Ford gave a national address recognizing Black History Month, and each year the president gives one. Now, I think Trump did one this year. I ain't looking for one from Trump, but I think he did one. I think he did one this year, but the Congress also puts out an official statement acknowledging it as well. For more information, go to brownielocks.com, B-R-O-W-N-I-E locks.com. They have more information, and they have the links to the organizations that are the governing bodies of these different monthly cultural celebrations also. In Dr. Woodson's most famous book, The Miseducation of the Negro, he said, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. You don't have to tell him, do not stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and stay in it. You don't have to tell him to go to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, he will cut him off for his special benefit because his education makes it necessary. He's talking about the program This brother was an educator. He's talking about deprogramming, decolonizing our minds, okay? All right, so Bantu Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, he said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we must take our minds back. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. All right, so with that, I'll wrap it up and say, Imhotep Asante Sana. I'll take some of your questions as well, if you have any questions. And then in the back, I have my DVD lectures back there. I have lectures dealing with the history of Black Wall Street, Great African Women, the History of the Mothers of Civilization. Where I talk about Ida B. Wells, Madam C.J. Walker, but Madam C.J. Walker's mentor, who was Annie Trumbull Malone, who was the one who actually created the black hair care industry. She wasn't talked about in the documentary. A lot of people don't talk about Annie Trumbull Malone. Most likely, she was the first self-made black female millionaire because Madam C.J. Walker was hired by her in 1905. Okay? And it's Annie Trumbull Malone who actually created the black hair care industry. All right, so with that, I'll take some of your questions.
I want to know, actually, I want to commend you
Oh, thank you.
for your outstanding presentation.
Oh, thank you. I cut it short, too. I just want to get some questions in, but thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm curious as to what prompted you or motivated you to compile all this information.
Oh, I have 40 of my lectures on DVD. So I started in 1992 at Wayne State University working on my undergraduate degree. That's why I started studying our history.
You were at the university when you decided?
Wayne State University? Yeah, well, I started studying back then, yeah. So I started the African History Network in 2009. I started the African History Network show March 10th, 2010. And understanding the importance of our history and culture and the impact that it has on our people. And one of the things that inspired me was listening to conscious hip hop back in the late 80s, early 90s. Professor Griffin, Public Enemy, and the X-Clan, things like this, Boogie Down Productions, listening to Malcolm X, Mr. Farrakhan, reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, listening to the African Center scholars like Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Yosef Bey Yakinen. All this was going on in the late 80s, early 90s. So that's what fueled it. The TV show A Different World is one of the most powerful TV shows in the history of television, right?
The other question is, is it possible for us who are here tonight to get a book or something that covers all that?
I don't have any books yet. People ask me to write books. I haven't written any books yet. I have some of my DVD lectures in the back that deal with a lot of these different topics. That helps to finance the African History Network, helps to finance the radio shows, helps to stay on the air, keep doing the research. So back there at my table, did you get one of the pamphlets that I have?
Yes.
Okay, got that. I'll give you one of the pamphlets also.
I have.
Yes, sir.
Also, as I was watching, one of the things you brought out was Malcolm X.
Oh, yes.
And I was so proud to know Malcolm X evolved out of gangster.
Oh, yeah. So 1952 to 64, he's paroled in August of 1952. And his brother, one of his brothers, lived in Inkster.
On William Street.
Yeah, so he stayed there. And there was an effort to preserve the house
Right.
that was there in Inkster. Yeah, so 52 to 64, yes. Yeah, he was here. And then his family, when his family leaves Oklahoma, they go to Lansing, Michigan, and then East Lansing. His family lived in Lansing, Michigan, and East Lansing also. Oh yes, his parents were Garveyites, absolutely. So Garvey influenced a whole lot of people. Garvey influenced Malcolm. Garvey influenced Dr. King. People don't talk about the influence that Marcus Garvey had on Dr. King. Garvey influenced a whole lot of people.
Yes.
And then also, 1930, Nation of Islam starts in Detroit. Okay, Elijah Muhammad was also a member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, Marcus Garvey. Okay, and that was the largest mass movement in the history of this country, the UNIA. I saw a hand right here from a fellow Wayne State warrior.
And this may open up a can of worms.
Okay, I'll come to you next.
Okay. Black
I'll come to you next.
versus African American.
Sure.
It's just that, okay, we have three races, right?
Based upon what?
I'm asking.
Because the concept of race evolves over the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. You have people like Dr. Carl von Linnaeus, who lives in the 18th century. He divides humanity into four races, and he attaches different negative stereotypes to the races. Then you have Dr. Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, who coins the term Caucasian in 1779. He divides humanity into five races. He's the head of the history department at the University of Göttingen in Germany. So the whole creation of races, which historically did not exist, the concept of race is relatively new. Okay, it comes out of white supremacy. White supremacy and racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay, and it comes out of the ideology of white supremacy. It's all about trying to preserve genetic white survival on the planet. Less than 10% European. So when you study the history of lynchings were domestic terrorism used to not just enforce Jim Crow laws, but to keep black men from intermixing with white women. Because they weren't necessarily in general lynching white men who intermixed with black women.
Right.
In general, that's not what it was. Because they were doing that for hundreds of years going back to slavery. Okay? And when you study the anti-miscegenation laws that start in the colonies in the 1600s, is directed towards black males intermixing with white women.
Right.
Okay? And the reason why is because you gotta go back in history. When slavery starts, the transatlantic slave trade starts in 1441, that's not Europeans' first interactions with African people. The African Moors had been in Europe going back to 711 AD. And they go into Spain and Portugal from Morocco, and millions of them go all throughout Europe. They go into Czechoslovakia, they go into Austria, they go into Germany, they go into France, a million of them settle in France, they go into Spain, Portugal. And since Spain and Portugal is right above Morocco, historically, when you look at the complexion of the Spanish and Portuguese, they were darker than the English. Because the Moors were intermixing with these populations. Okay? Yeah, so they saw that for hundreds of years. And then when they start circumnavigating the globe, because of the Moors that reintroduced the concepts of longitude and latitude, when we studied Christopher Columbus, August 3rd, 1492, he set sail on the Nina de Pinta de Santa Maria. He's using nautical instruments introduced into Europe by the Moors.
So I want you to go back to that slide where you showed all the different history months for every culture.
Sure.
So, when you say the race black, who could fit up under there?
Well, black largely the term black comes from the Black Power movement, going back to the mid-60s. Okay, now the term black was used probably just like the term African American. That was created by Jesse Jackson in 1989. African American, the earliest recorded usage goes back to May 15, 1782, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, because when you study some of the organizations we were created, they had the term African in them. African Methodist Episcopal Church, 1816. Grand African Lodge, Prince Hall, 1787. Free African Society, 1787. Right? So we had, many of us, especially some free African Americans, had a connection to Africa. You have Paul Cuffey, who had the first Back to Africa movement. Okay? So all this stuff was not new. These discussions we've had before. But because of the Black Power movement, in opposition to white power, okay, and you basically have Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, and you have Mukasa Dada, who was really rich. They basically created the term Black Power about 1966. They get Dr. King to use the term Black Power because they were friends with Dr. King. I've interviewed Mukasa Dada about this history. Okay, so you have that, and it was a sense of pride. Now, back in '66, you had a lot of Negroes who didn't want to use the term black. It was too powerful for them. Okay, no, we'd rather be Negro. It's safer. Okay, so when we study this, I'm not attacking anybody, I'm saying you got to understand this history, right? So the term African American, first of all, when you understand our history, the last 50,000 years, African people are the original Americans. We were here before Native Americans came into existence. Because when you study Dr. David Imhotep's book, he deals with when Asians come here around 3000 BC, the Africans and Asians intermix, and the people and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Because when you go look at old black and white photographs of Native Americans, they were dark-skinned people. They were not the light-skinned, almost white-looking Native Americans you see today. A lot of those people either intermixed with white people or they were descendants of white people who had their names added to the Dawes Allotment Act, the Dawes Rolls of 1887, which is a redistribution of 138 million acres of land. And most of that land was supposed to go to black Indians, but was supposed to go to Indians and African Americans and black Indians. And white people got 2/3 of that land. It was like a census. And to get that land, you had to anglicize your name. So when white people found out about this, a lot of them paid $5 to get their names added to the Dawes Rolls, and then they were able to get some of this land as well. So a lot of the really white-looking Native Americans you see today, some of them are descendants of those people who did that. I'm not sure if any of them were related to Elizabeth Warren, but you know, that's what happened. Okay, so if you read his book, read Black Labor, White Woe by Dr. Claude Anderson, read How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy, put out by the Nation Islam Research Group, a fantastic book. This history is deep. This all deals with a maldistribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. Okay, yes, brother.
Yeah, I wasn't know.
Is any water around here?
Did you study Nate Taylor?
Nat Turner? Yeah, the Southampton Common Rebellion, 1831. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to work for it's Jake Jackson.
You used to work for who?
It's Jake Jackson.
Oh, his great-great-grandson. Okay. All right, absolutely. So the Nat Turner Rebellion in 1831, Nat Turner, there's a few things that came out of that. Number one, Nat Turner was literate. He was a preacher. He didn't have formal training, but he could read and write. Okay? And at this time in Virginia, it's legal for slaves to learn to read and write. Oh, they're going to change that after the Nat Turner Rebellion. The state legislature passed a law that made it illegal for slaves to learn to read and write in the state of Virginia. Right. Because he used the Bible as a tool to teach his people they were supposed to be free. Yes. Okay? And in the Nat Turner Rebellion, so in Virginia, that's also where you had the Gabriel Prosser Rebellion of 1800. And so that was in Virginia as well. So when the Nat Turner Rebellion takes place in 1831, right, people are scared to death because they don't know how many people are involved in the rebellion. So it's not until he's captured. He's in hiding for about 60 days. Okay, it's not until he's captured, and they realize, okay, they got all the people because they were killing African Americans indiscriminately, trying to find out how many were involved in the rebellion as well. So he was executed November 11th, 1831, and that's a deep history. Okay, dealing with that because that rebellion almost ended slavery in the state of Virginia as well. Okay, that almost ended slavery in the state of Virginia. So that's a significant rebellion to study. Yeah, that's a significant rebellion to study. Now, what's interesting, because I've done a lecture dealing with the Nat Turner Rebellion, what a lot of people don't know is that Nat Turner's mother was from Haiti. And her and her slave master fled Haiti during the 1790s, during the Haitian Revolution. So when you study Nat Turner, his mother taught him to hate slavery. Okay? Okay, next question.
I just, basically, okay, first of all, I just want to commend you for your wealth of knowledge. You are certainly a walking library. And I'm like, I probably won't be able to sleep trying to process all this.
Sorry.
Put it out, like, wow. Yeah. Like, stop, almost like the Holy Ghost, right? So, but what I wanted to say is that you spoke at the end of your presentation a language. What did you say? What was that?
You said at the end of the language?
You said you spoke.
Oh, Imhotep. Imhotep is Medunet from the ancient Egyptians. Ma'at was a deity, a nectar or goddess of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, and reciprocity. Hotep is a sacred word that is an offering of peace in the Medunet language. So Hotep basically means an offering of peace based upon those 7 principles of Ma'at. And when you see Ma'at, she's depicted usually with the outstretched wings, and she has an ostrich feather in her headband. And when you study these spiritual systems coming out of ancient Kemet, when you have the scales of justice in the legal system, that comes from this weighing of the scales of Ma'at. Okay, in your heart, if you lived your life correctly, it was said that when you died, your heart was weighed on the scales, and if you lived your life correctly, your heart would be lighter than the feather of Ma'at. Okay, so it's showing that the feather of Ma'at, it symbolized righteousness, and if you live based upon those tenets, your heart will be lighter than that feather. Okay, and if you go to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, if you go through the main exhibit and Still We Rise, and they show you history prior to slavery, and they show you ancient Egypt, they have a depiction called the judgment scene. They have that there at the museum. And then, yeah, okay. Did I say Wakanda forever? Because Wakanda is a Bantu word. Wakanda is a Native American languages, the Omaha Ponca language and the Sioux Indian language. Wakanda means possessing secret powers. And there's also in some Bantu languages as well. And Bantu is a group of 500 languages spoken in Southern Africa, spoken in Cameroon, spoken in East Africa. So even though, when we look at Black Panther, even though Wakanda is a fictitious place, it's a real word. The film Black Panther helps to reconnect us to African history, culture, African languages, all of that. The film is deep.
Yeah.
I've done extensive research dealing with the film and how it relates to African history, things like that. I saw a hand somewhere. Yes. Angela Bassett that's actually his stepmother in there. Her name is Ramonda. She's the queen of Wakanda.
This statement I'm about to make, what do you think about
Go ahead.
all humans that live in America are African Americans?
All humans that live in America are African Americans?
Yeah, what do you think about that statement?
Well, I disagree with that. There's genetic differences because when you study.
Can I say the statement?
Oh, go ahead.
Because the first man, according to the Holy Bible, lived in Africa. What's your thoughts on that?
All people are not African. Now, if you want to say that humanity has its origins in Africa, that's true. But you have genetic modifications over the years. You have, and there's genetic differences. Even though we deal with humanity, you have genetic differences between Europeans, between Asians. That's why you can do DNA tests and tell where people came from, tell the differences. So all people, the Europeans are not Africans. Now, all humanity starts in Africa. But no. And when we look at the leading theory, you look at the depigmentation that takes place because the Africans are in Europe tens of thousands of years ago, and they get trapped in the warm ice age. It's about 40,000, 50,000 years ago. And to adapt to the environment and to get some of the ultraviolet rays of the suns to get in for a chemical process to take place to create vitamin D3, you have a chemical called 7-dehydrocholesterol. The bottom two, there are 5 layers of your skin, your epidermis. The bottom 2 layers create a chemical called 7-dehydrocholesterol that's used to create vitamin D3, okay? And the leading theory is that the body's adapted to that cold environment. You have a depigmentation taking place, and this takes place over thousands of years. So when we look at all people are African, I disagree with that. Now, you can say humanity starts in Africa and they migrate out, sure. But you're going to have things that take place with humanity that give you the different, what you want to call them, races, or even give them the different types of people in different parts of the world. Okay, that's going to take place. Now, if we look at the Eskimos, the Inuits, the reason why they were able to maintain their darker complexion is because they have a vitamin rich in fish, which has vitamin D in it. This is why Dr. David Imhotep deals with that in the first Americans were African. Yeah. What was the method to describe?
It was meant to describe your political leanings or your political.
You're talking about in the 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah, so black was a consciousness,
Yeah.
right? Black is a consciousness. That's what was coming out of the 60s. This is even before James Brown said, "I'm black and I'm proud,"
Right.
which he got a lot of flack from. Also creating that, he got a lot of flack from some of his white listeners and things like this. But it was a political consciousness that was part of the Black Power movement. Okay, and if we go back to say the 1700s, right? Black was a term that was used to describe African people, but it wasn't as popular. Negro back at that time would be more popular, that was used to describe Africans. Now, some people make the argument that black is not a nationality and black is a status, just like white is a status. That is true when you deal with law and you deal with Black's Law Dictionary. And this is an argument that some Moors make. So if I use the term black, I'm not talking about nationality. I'm talking about ethnic group. Okay, dealing with black people in America or African Americans. One of my teachers, Professor James Small, he says I'm an African American. He said that African is my race, America is my geopolitical place. Okay, and this is one of my teachers. This is a brilliant brother, Professor James Small. Okay, all right. Another. I saw a hand here and then back there.
Since then, was God is after, will say that all will have a percentage of back?
Some will have a small percentage here going to have, if you do a DNA test, they'll have a small percentage. And depending upon what happened in the genealogy, it determines what that percentage is. So you have some white people who have a small percentage of black, you know. They ain't black to me. But yeah, someone have a small percentage, yeah.
Should be whole girl.
It should be what?
Whole girl.
It should be the whole what?
Whole girl.
Whole barrel.
Whole world?
Yeah.
Well, humanity starts in Africa. And they migrate and different things are going to happen to them when they go into different areas. But yeah, go ahead.
It should change. Should
Oh, yeah, it's going to change, absolutely. It's going to change as they adapt to their environment, as they intermix with other people. Absolutely. Absolutely, it's going to change. Yeah, that's why you have to study like the last 50,000, 100,000 years of history to understand those changes that take place. Okay, one more question. I think one more. Okay, I saw the sister here, and then we'll go again.
Well,
Yes,
I just
Kristen.
wondered if you did any extensive, because you touched on vitamin D, and you had some knowledge. And medical society today don't seem to have the same knowledge that you have on vitamin D. I started turning white, losing my color.
That's in the wintertime?
No, I
When?
was turning vitiligo.
Oh, okay.
And I went to the doctor and they said, there's nothing we can do for you, that's vitiligo. And it was something in my spirit said take vitamin D.
Right.
All my color came back.
Yeah.
But now they're starting to find out vitamin D, that lack of us getting vitamin D because of our pigment. Have you done research on that? Because
Professor Carbohydrate Combinate, one of my teachers has, we did like a year-long class on the African History Network show once a week that dealt with science, that dealt with the Dogon from Mali, that dealt with some of that information. That's how I know it. Okay? And what happens is during the wintertime, your complexion is usually lighter than in the summertime because you're getting less exposure to the sun. Usually you're getting less vitamin D in the wintertime. Okay? Because there's less sunlight in the sun because of the position of the earth to the sun. Okay? There's less sunlight. That's why the days are short. That all deals with astronomy, things like that. So usually during the wintertime, unless you're taking vitamin D supplements, your complexion is usually going to be a little lighter in the wintertime. You may be sluggish, you may be more sluggish also. That comes from a lack of vitamin D. There are different side effects from a lack of vitamin D. Okay, one last question, brother.
You know, this presentation is brought back something I remember when I was a kid over at my grandmama's house, sitting around the pot-belly stove.
Okay.
And I saw a flash of it in your presentation in the film.
Okay.
And she was having a conversation with my grandfather. Now, my grandma was part Indian.
Yes.
She had some Indian in her. My father
Which Native American tribe?
I think it was Blackfoot or something like that.
Blackfoot, either Blackfoot or Black Crow.
Something like that. I can't remember, because back then, anyway, my grandfather came from Tennessee.
Yes.
So my people before then, they had a business. Their own property, but the white folks took it. You know, they took their property, their business that was.
That's one of the things we were fleeing during the Great Migration.
Yes. And I heard her make a statement around this stove. She was talking to Grandpa Sam. She said that that Negro wasn't the only zipper gripper. But she said the white women was Moses doing more zipper gripping than the black men.
Right.
And then I seen that, you know, right
I
there.
See, there was consensual relationships going on between black men and white women.
Yeah.
And then this is what Ida B. Wells exposed. Also, if you study the Wilmington Massacre of 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Manly P. Hall, I think was his name. He was a newspaper publisher there. He exposed the same thing. They destroyed his newspaper office. He exposed the same thing. And this was one of the things that lynchings were designed to do, to break that up, because they didn't want the offspring to be black. They were trying to keep their bloodline pure, one. Two, they were using the lynchings to enforce the Jim Crow laws. So when you have the civil rights movement in 55 in the 60s, the goal of the civil rights movement was not to sit on the toilet next to white people. They wanted all their rights right now. 1. 2, they wanted to knock down the Jim Crow laws. 3, they were trying to attack the white domestic terrorism that was used to enforce the Jim Crow laws. These are things that they were fighting against. But it got skewed because that history wasn't passed on oftentimes, and it got skewed. And we think the whole goal was to sit, you know, to eat at a lunch counter next to the white people. That's not what the goal was. No, we wanted all of our rights right now, and our taxpayer dollars were paying for jobs in city government all the times that we couldn't hold, like in the police department, the fire department. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for that. We said we want all of our rights right now. We fought in World War II. We fought in World War I. We fought, 5,000 of us fought in the American Revolutionary War, 1775, 1783, for this country. Okay? We said we want all of our rights right now.
And I never have been able to understand that.
Say it again?
I have never been able to understand what we want when we were the first here. I've never been able to understand that.
Well,
What put us in a position to say we want when we actually had
have what?
rights? We were the first one here.
Well, the rights were not being enforced. We wanted the enforcement of all the rights.
Who
Because,
had the audacity to take our rights?
well,
Who let them do that?
it depends upon what period of time you look at it.
Yeah.
It happened at gunpoint. Okay, but to take over the country, set up the 13 colonies, which are franchises of England. Okay, but what we're doing when they talk about Charles Hamilton Houston, we understood that what we were doing was contesting these laws based upon the U.S. Constitution, which was the supreme law of the land. Because based upon the Constitution, we had those rights. But they were not being enforced. They were being obstructed, especially in the South.
Right.
So we're contesting that. And we're overturning the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case, which solidified separate but equal, which solidified and legalized the Jim Crow laws that usurped the U.S. Constitution, that usurped the 14th Amendment, usurped the 15th Amendment, that gave African American men the right to vote. Okay? We're saying no, our rights that the Constitution says we have are not being enforced, they're being blocked. Okay? So we were knocking down all those laws. All right. One last question. I saw a hand there and I won't shut up.
Oh, no, I was just wondering too, because I was reading about how close the friendship Sam Cooke was with Malcolm X, and I was just wondering.
And Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
Yes, and I was just wondering, do some of the lectures go into like the music industry and how some of them fought for their rights for equality and how they died?
I posted articles on Sam Cooke on our fan page, the African History Network. I haven't dealt with Sam Cooke in a lecture before. I'm familiar with that. Yeah, Sam Cooke helped to finance the civil rights movement.
Right.
Just like Aretha Franklin, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, things like this. They used their art to be able to reach people.
Right.
And to bring, Dick Gregory was another. Because Dick Gregory sacrificed his career and sacrificed millions of dollars to really join the civil rights movement, right? And really become an activist. But they used their arts in various ways to project more positive images of African Americans, to get our information out, to get the message out that we wanted more so, but also to take a lot of that money they made and help to finance the civil rights movement as well. Okay, so it's all about staying in your lane and knowing your position. So to be able to know your position, to be able to play your position, you have to know your position. You have to understand that different positions exist. This is why everybody can't be out front. If you look at a football team, right? And I haven't watched a football game in 2 years. That's why I have my Colin Kaepernick shirt on. I ain't watched the Super Bowl. Why? Colin Kaepernick didn't get hired, so why am I going to watch? You know, hashtag I'm with Cap, right? I've done 2 lectures dealing with Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
But if you look at a football team, if you look at the best team in the league, whatever year, say you got a football team that wins the Super Bowl for 10 years. 10 years in a row, right? What's the most important position on the football team, on the field? 11 men on the field. What's the most important position, right? Quarterback. Everybody says quarterback. You ever seen a team with 11 quarterbacks on the field?
No.
Why not? It's the most important position. Why not? Because every position on the team is important, and it's based upon your physical attributes, your speed, your height. Your running backs are built differently than your wide receivers. Running backs are usually shorter, stockier, more muscular. They're running to get short yardages. Your wide receivers are sprinters. They're usually taller, got a wide wingspan, so they can lean away from the defender, catch the ball, stay in bounds, and run down the sidelines. Your quarterbacks are built a certain way. Your offensive linemen are heavier. Okay? So everybody on the team knows their position. They're all wearing the same uniform. They're operating from the same playbook. They're on the same team, but they know the position, play the position. But oftentimes the game is won in the last few seconds by the field goal kicker who spends the least amount of time on the field. So if we understand our position, understand the game, and play from the playbook, we can win. All right. Okay, I'll wrap it up with that. Okay, go ahead.
What knowledge that you have?
Yes, sir.
Did you become curious enough to find your origin?
Find my origin?
Where did you come from?
Yeah, I mean, my people come from Mississippi, Tennessee. I have Cherokee and Black Crow on my mother's side. So when we deal with things like Native American history, when we deal with the Black Freedmen Indian treaties of 1866, things like that, and that's after the Civil War ends. The 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians.
Beyond that?
Beyond that?
Beyond that.
I haven't done a DNA test yet. I'll probably do that this year.
Because I realize that most of the people who came from where my parents came from originated out of Sierra Leone.
Oh, yeah. In West Africa,
And I
yes.
was just wondering if you know
Yeah,
that
not yet.
about your people.
Not yet. I'll do a DNA test probably this year. If you do a DNA test, you probably want to do AfricanAncestry.com, AfricanAncestry.com. Because not only can they tell you what region you came from, they can tell you which tribe or high culture you came from, whether it's Yoruba, Igbo, etc. Wolof, they can tell you that.
That's a good point he made. I learned. That's why I asked about the Black and whether a Native American. I learned that my maternal grandmother, her grandmother was just a full Creek Indian. I mean, full Indian.
Right.
And then she married my grandfather, who was a man that was a very dark, man. So when I think about, you started out, who are you?
Right.
I can't all the way say, knowing what I know now, that I am, if we say Black, it's not Native American. When I think of Black, I think of Black, white, yellow people. But it's Black, and this is my perspective comes, it could be an Arab, it could be a Hispanic person. When I think of a race.
Well, Hispanic and Arabs are not race. Those are language groups.
No, when I think of that, I think of Black people. That's my perspective of those cultures that you showed. There's different cultural about Black. So when I think of Black, and I'm just thinking like Bishop said, who am I?
Right.
I can't always say, or we can't always say like this man say that I'm Black. My grandmother's mother is totally a Creek Indian. I learned.
Right. And the Creeks own Black slaves too.
Oklahoma,
well, that's where they go in. That's the origins of Oklahoma.
Right.
The Creek, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and some of the Indians, they all own Black slaves also.
Yeah.
So when
I used to go into the Pakistan's homes.
Right.
When I would go into their homes, they would look at me and say, "You look like our women." And they taught me that Pakistans are Indian. They come.
Pakistan was part of India. India was a colony of Ethiopia 8,000 years ago.
Yeah. So when we say, "Who are we?"
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of different.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up with there. Come see me at my table in the back. If you like this type of information, definitely get some of our DVD lectures back there. We have a bundle pack today. You get 6 of them for $50, most of them are $10 or $5. And that helps to finance all this research, helps us to stay on the air, keep doing the research, things like that. Okay? All right, thanks for your attention. Peace.